This week we're taking a very brief break from season XV to give a quick review of a movie that is currently in theaters. Breaking news. This is basically the first horror movie of 2024, and I went to see it a couple of days ago, so I figured you might be interested in hearing more about it. So buckle in, because you're about to get a spoiler-free review of the movie Night Swim. Alright, so the reason I was interested in this movie in the first place basically comes down to two names, Jason Blum and James Wan. Jason Blum famously is the leader of Blumhouse, which has produced a lot of the movies we've reviewed in the past, and James Wan is probably more famous as a director, but he also has a company called Atomic Monster that has produced a bunch of the movies in the Conjuring universe. So at the very beginning of this year, Blumhouse and Atomic Monster merged, and Night Swim was the first movie that they co-released. That's basically all I knew about it when I went to see it, and, that's enough to get me to buy a ticket. Two horror OGs releasing a new movie together, I'm in. But since then, I've done some additional reading on it, so I thought I would share a little bit more background that I kind of wish I had when I went to see it in the first place. Night Swim was written and directed by a guy named Bryce McGuire. Not the Bryce that's usually on this show, just another Bryce. This was his first full-length film, but it was actually based on a horror short, also called Night Swim, that was released in 2014 that he worked on with another guy named Rod Blackhurst. The short is on YouTube and free if you want to go watch it. It's under 5 minutes long and is legitimately pretty creepy. Looking back on it now, it totally makes sense that what I watched in the theater 2 nights ago was a built-out version of a short film. The movie reuses a lot of the horror film techniques that worked well in the short film, but it also has built up a lot of story around it. The short worked really well because it didn't have to have a plot or any background or anything. You were just kind of tossed right in the deep end. And it could keep the pedal to the metal the whole time. For an hour-and-a-half long movie, you definitely need more than that. You've got to build out characters. You need to have some twists and turns along the way. And that wasn't anything that was in the short. So the movie feels like it took some of the ideas and the techniques for creating scary scenes and then added a lot of filler around it to make something more cohesive. I won't say that this was an A+ movie, but there were a lot of things I liked about it. For one, Wyatt Russell plays one of the lead roles, and I think he's a good actor. You might remember him from the playtest episode of Black Mirror that we talked about a few seasons ago. Another positive was just the general movie making. The camera work, the sound, the special effects, it was all great. After watching a bunch of low-budget 90s movies for the last couple of months, it was nice to see a good, well-made horror movie in a theater. And then another positive for me for this was it kind of reminded me of The Babadook in a way. The circumstances of the plot were obviously pretty different, but that idea of using horror to tell a very human story or to symbolize things in our lives that we have trouble dealing with is, to me at least, a really effective form of storytelling. The Babadook symbolized the mom's grief and inability to move on and the impact that was having on herself and her son, and this one had a similar layer, but I won't go into any more detail in order to avoid spoilers. This wasn't by any means a perfect movie. My main complaint is that the story about the origins of what was happening was convoluted and not that compelling. Like, if you really stop to think about it, it's hard to explain exactly what was happening without finding some things that happened that didn't line up with that over the course of the movie. But you can kind of also say that about pretty much any supernatural horror movie. This one was only an hour and a half long, and it kept moving for the most part. I really enjoyed going to see it as my first theater experience of 2024, and I'm looking forward to more co-productions from Blumhouse and Atomic Monster in the future. I definitely don't feel like this movie needs a sequel, but I also don't regret going to see it. So yeah, that's it. That's my quick review of Night Swim. I hope you're all staying warm out there, and we'll be back next week with a normal episode to review The Fear from 1995.